Okay, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining us here today. As you all know, my father is currently traveling from India to New Zealand at the moment. So we'll be conducting the program. And today's program is a realization program given by His Grace Mother Dvisa Prabhu, who is a very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with Mother Dvisa Prabhu. He was a staple, integral member of ISKCON in the early years of Srila Prabhupada's movement in the West. And we have this nice 50-minute realization given by him, which I think all of us will be will find very, very insightful, inspiring as well. So what we'll basically, how we'll do this is that we'll listen for the 50 minutes. And then after that, if everyone can give their realizations as to what they found inspiring or what they learned, or if any comments that you want to add based on those realizations given, that would be great. And we can go one at a time. There's no rush. So we'll just start the program in about 2 minutes. Just give us 1 second. And we'll just start it up. Hare Krishna. Okay, Haribol. We are ready to start the program now. So we'll start the video. If anyone finds that there's any audio issues or anything, please maybe give us a message on the chat, and then we'll try and sort it out. But hopefully everything should be fine. So yeah, we'll start the video now. Hare Krishna. And then we'll meet back in about 50 minutes with your realizations.
I had got some beads. I had strung my own beads, but I didn't have Tulsi beads. They had some other beads. Gargamuni, who ran the store, ran out of Tulsi beads. There's so many people. There was these other beads, and they were kind of dark red wood. They were blackish, dark red wood. And I had very proudly strung them on this orange cord, and they were very nice beads, I thought. On my initiation night, I came, the moment of truth came when you would come up and you'd give Prabhupada your beads. And in those days, it was a very personal thing. He would he would be sitting there before the fire, and you'd give him the beads, and he would sit there and he would chant a whole round right there in front of you. So I came up and I gave Prabhupada my beads, and he looked at the beads and he says, "Oh, Rudraksha. We don't chant on Rudraksha. Rudraksha is like the Shiva beads that Shivites have." And I said, "No, Prabhupada, they're not Rudraksha." This sudden feeling of being rejected. Oh no, I'm right at the brink of becoming his disciple, and now my beads are being rejected. So I said, "No, Prabhupada, they're not Rudraksha." And he looked at him again closer, and he could see, oh, they weren't Rudraksha, they weren't Tulsi beads. And he said, "How come you don't have Tulsi beads?" And I said, "Oh, Gargamuni ran out of Tulsi beads." And he said, "Well, this is all right." So he kind of took them, and he chanted on them. And we'd say, "And your name is Madhudvisa." And when he said Madhudvisa, have you ever heard Prabhupada say your name, you never forget it. The way he says it, because it becomes genuine when he says it, Madhudvisa. And everybody says, "Wow, Madhudvisa, what does that mean? Who is that? What is that? And what did he say?" And you forget your name right away, although you heard him clearly say it, you forget it. So later on you have Upendra, one of the servants, ask Prabhupada, "What does his name mean?" And, this and that. So I asked Prabhupada, what the name means, and he broke it down. Dvisha means to be envious, D-V-I-S-A, Dvisha, to be envious. And Madhu, as you know, is the great demon. So Madhu Dvisha means one who is envious of Madhu. And I said, "Prabhupada, how can Krishna be envious of anyone?" And Prabhupada said, "No, Krishna can be envious too. Madhu was such a great demon that he became envious of him and cut his head off, annihilated the Madhu demon." So anything's possible, with Krishna, any emotion. It's in its perfect form. The first time Prabhupada gave me a personal assignment was when I was in Los Angeles, and we had just moved into the La Cienega Temple, which was the first church in the history of ISKCON. We had always operated out of storefronts in New York City, in Los Angeles, at Pico Boulevard, in San Francisco at Frederick Street. And everybody, it was like storefront. That was the modus operandi of the devotees in those days. Go rent a storefront, and open a temple. So everybody kind of did that. But in La Cienega Boulevard, we had actually rented a church. It was a big, fairly good-sized church. So we were all there, and we were going on Sankirtan. Everything was going on very well. And I was the treasurer, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was the president. And there was a lot of older devotees there. So we were kind of at loggerheads with each other, myself and Tamal. We were always serving together, but somehow or other we were pulling in different directions at some times. So Srila Prabhupada called me in and called Tamal in together. And so he said, "Well, why is there a problem?" And Tamal said, "Well, Madhavisa can do the same things I do. And, we both can do them, but sometimes he wants to do them and sometimes I want to do them, and we get into conflict like this." So Srila Prabhupada said, "Well, let Madhavisa go to San Francisco and be the temple president there." So I said, "Great, this is a breath of fresh air. I'm going to go and become the temple president in San Francisco, the temple that I originally joined at." And that was a special responsibility because that's where our Rath Yatra festival was held. In those days, there was no other Rath Yatra festivals on a grand style. There was maybe some small festivals, but there wasn't even any Rath Yatra festival in Los Angeles in those days. But in San Francisco, that was the new Jagannath Puri, and we had a tradition of a grand Rath Yatra. So when I was sent to San Francisco, that was the first, personal instruction that I was receiving from Srila Prabhupada. I had been serving Prabhupada, but it was always as the group. It wasn't, Prabhupada saying, go there and take responsibility. And he said, make this Rath Yatra even grander. Make it like it is in Jagannath Puri in India. So I went there to San Francisco with that feeling of responsibility. Srila Prabhupada was tremendously pleased with the Rath Yatra festival. And he said, this is the process of keeping the devotees, all of the devotees, enlivened. Because now Krishna consciousness was kind of spread out a little bit. It was getting far-reaching. There was temples like opening in Seattle, in Vancouver, and places that were kind of spreading the devotees out. So these festivals served as reunions, during the year. So this Rath Yatra in 1969, devotees were coming from all over, the country, actually. Brahmananda and some devotees came from New York, and there was devotees from Vancouver and Portland. There was a temple then, Los Angeles. So that was like a reunion, and all the devotees would come together, and Srila Prabhupada would come there, and it was a tremendous thing, to have all the devotees serving Srila Prabhupada. Everything was new and everything was special for that engagement. Even down to the buttons on Srila Prabhupada's kurta. I remember one devotee was in charge, and he was stressing that we have to have pearl buttons for Prabhupada's kurta. I'm saying, Prabhupada, why just regular buttons? We can't afford it. And he said, no, we have to have pearl buttons. And so we went and bought the pearl buttons. And it was like, that's how much it was. Everything had to be new, fresh, and perfect. And even though we were still operating out of just a little storefront, it was all painted, everything was clean, everything was spick and span for the festival. And Srila Prabhupada came, to that little storefront for the festival day. And I remember there were so many devotees that, the devotees couldn't get in the front door. Most of the devotees were standing out on the sidewalk. He always was stressing that this was part of our tradition, that Lord Jagannath in all his majesty would go out and take a chariot ride. And it made a very personal thing. Whenever Srila Prabhupada would talk about Krishna, it made it so much more personal. We still didn't have the real personal feeling that standing before the Lord, we could see the Lord and sense that, that feeling and that rapport with him. But Srila Prabhupada would make it personal, that Krishna is coming out. And I remember when Srila Prabhupada arrived at the temple for the day before the festival, he came to the temple and we were making the chariots right across the street in the lot. So Prabhupada went over to the lot. We're all, it was still in disarray and everything. It was a small lot, but there was 3 chariots being built there. And Prabhupada paid his obeisances in front of the chariots. And he looked at me and he said, the chariots are as good as the Lord. And that made it all so much more personal. That here we are, we're building chariots for the Lord, but the chariots themselves were, objects of worship. So it made it, a real. It brought the whole spectrum of Krishna consciousness was there in the Rath Yatra festival. The chariots, the garlands, the prasadam, the instruments, everything, the clothes for the deities. We're all on that same worshipable, level. Prabhupada always had this really, close feeling with Jayananda, and Jayananda was he was the nuts and bolts man there in San Francisco. You may know that when he first became a devotee, he drove a taxi. Although he was an educated, a man, he had his degree in engineering or something like that from the University of Ohio, but he somehow ended up in San Francisco, and he became a devotee, and he felt the responsibility of going out and driving a taxi and to provide money for the temple. And he was one of the few devotees in the beginning who actually held down a 9-to-5 job. So Jayananda always would take that personal feeling of, if there was something wrong or something broken in the temple, specifically the cars. He could always find them underneath the cars, fixing the cars. And Srila Prabhupada knew this. He knew that Jayananda was behind the scenes, making it all work. And later on, he would make comments like Jayananda would walk in the room once when Prabhupada was lecturing, and he said, "Oh, the Goswami has arrived." And another occasion, he said, "Jayananda looks just like Lord Chaitanya, big shoulders, big, man." And Jayananda almost blushed his way out of existence when Prabhupada would compliment him like that, because he was naturally so humble. Srila Prabhupada used to travel with a secretary and a cook, and it was like, an entourage, a Sanskrit scholar that was working on his books with him. So it was usually 3 or 4 people that would travel with him. But this time he was going to Nairobi, Africa, and it was a short trip. It was only for 2 weeks or so that we were going. So he decided that I would come with him. Just Prabhupada and myself would go. There was no cook, there was no secretary, there was no Sanskrit scholar. I was going to be, everything rolled in one for those 2 weeks. So I thought, wow, this is fantastic. Srila Prabhupada. I was getting a little burnt out with India. I've been to India for a couple of years then, and it was a struggle in those days. So I was wanting to do something else. So Prabhupada took me to Nairobi. And the day, 3 days before we were leaving, we got this telegram from Brahmananda in Nairobi saying that the deities had broken. They had sent new deities there, and the deities had broken. So, according to Shastra, the deity which is broken is not supposed to be installed in the temple, and that was one of the reasons specifically that Prabhupada was going to install these deities in the temple in Nairobi. So therefore, I had to, frantically go around in Jaipur. We were at Jaipur at that time, and this is where all the deities are made, and marble deities. And we had to frantically travel around Jaipur on a rickshaw for a couple of days, trying to get new deities lined up. So finally, we got new deities lined up, but we couldn't ship them like like on a ship or on a plane or anything like that, because we didn't want to take the chance of them breaking again, and so we personally had to take these deities, and these were big, full-size deities, marble deities, about 3.5 feet tall, 4 feet tall maybe, and they were very heavy. But we took them personally from Jaipur to Bombay. So then when we get on the plane in Bombay, I had to personally carry each deity onto the plane, and we set them in front of us. So Prabhupada had a deity sitting in front of him, and I had a deity sitting in front of me, and we went to Jaipur like that. So it was pretty strenuous, physically strenuous, just to get on the plane. Because Srila Prabhupada walked onto the plane, so I had to go in through customs, pick one deity up, walk up the gangplank, onto the plane, put the deity down, and run back, get Krishna, and get Radha, and come up like that. So finally, we got on the plane. And I was a little bit tired. So Prabhupada said, "Oh, so are you ready to fight?" And I said, "Fight, Prabhupada?" "What do you mean?" He said, "We are Vaishnavas, and we must be ready to fight with the Mayavadis." So I said, "Well, yeah, all right." So he said to me, "You be the Mayavadi, and I'll be the Vaishnava. We'll have a fight." So I said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I don't know if I'm qualified to, debate with you like this." He said, "No, you be the Mayavadi." So I said, "Well, all right." So I was the Mayavadi, and here we are flying up over there. What was it? It's the Indian Ocean there or something? I don't know. What's the ocean that separates Africa from India? Anyways, going east. We're flying. We finally got settled, and we're up in the air. So Prabhupada's sitting right next to me like that, right like these flowers here, and we're talking to each other, face to face, with the deities, Radha and Krishna, right at our feet, and we're debating, we're fighting. And so I'm a Mayavadi, and I'm not a very good devotee, so I'm not even a very good Mayavadi as far as philosophically being able to, spar with Prabhupada. But anyways, I took the position of the Mayavadi, and he defeated me, soundly defeated me. So then he said, all right. He said, now he had just defeated me with the Vaishnava, arguments. So he said to me, now I'll be the Mayavadi and you be the Vaishnava. So I said, all right, now I know all the arguments. There's no way he can defeat me. So we started to fight again, argue again. And he was such an expert that he was able to defeat me as a Vaishnava, and he took the position of a Mayavadi. So I said, And then after the defeat, I was totally mortified, but not really, you know. But I thought that, I know a little bit of Vaishnava philosophy. I should be able to defeat, the Mayavadi arguments. And Prabhupada said to me, he said, this is how expert you must become in your preaching. You must be able to take the position of your opponent and know his position so thoroughly that you can defeat your own philosophy with his philosophy. He said, that's how expert you must become in this preaching of Krishna consciousness. So after flying all that way to Nairobi and being exhausted, we finally arrived at the airport. And now the ordeal of taking the deities off the plane, Radha, first getting Krishna down, all the way down to customs, and then go back up to the plane, and then all the way down, get Radharani back over to customs, and wait in line, move one deity, another deity. So gradually we got through customs, and there we are, standing outside, and there's no devotees. There's not one devotee there at the airport. So we're there. We've got the deities, we've got the luggage. So this one Hindu gentleman came over and said, "Oh, Bhaktivedanta Swami, you're supposed to arrive tomorrow, And Prabhupada said, "Oh, they've got it wrong again." How many times we've done this? They've got it wrong again. So he says, "Oh, I have a car. I'll take you to the temple." So we didn't call the temple naturally. We just jumped in the car and went over to the temple. Came to the door. The door's locked. All right, so we knock on the door. Prabhupada's there waiting at the door. We knocked on the door. So I still remember it clearly. Brahmananda comes to the door. He opens the door. And there Prabhupada's looking him right in the face. Prabhupada, he goes, "Oh my God!" And he faces the face and says, he's just got a little towel on, no shoes, nothing. And the whole temple, it's the day before Prabhupada arrives, so everything is totally in disarray. The paint is still wet on the banister, the floors are all wet, and construction is going on. And Prabhupada's there, oh my God, he falls flat in his face. "Prabhupada, you're supposed to come tomorrow." Prabhupada, "Where's my room?" "Oh, it's not finished, Prabhupada, it's not." "Where's my room?" "Oh, back here." So Prabhupada just walked to his room. And while he was sitting there in his room, everybody was frantically running around trying to make his room a room. It wasn't a room when he walked in. It was just a bare room with no bed, nothing. So Prabhupada got in his room, and everything was gradually came about. The deities were installed. But unfortunately, I had been in India for some time, and I had been taking care of myself, but at the end in Jaipur, I stopped drinking my sugarcane juice. I would drink sugarcane juice all the time, and my blood sugar went down, I think, and I got hepatitis as soon as I arrived in Nairobi. So there I was, my shining hour, to be the secretary, the Sanskrit man, the cook, the masseuse, everything, and I'm laying on my back. I'm useless. The Prabhupada came into my room, and I'm laying there, and I'm trying to struggle to get out of the bed to pay my businesses. And Prabhupada said, no, just stay there. And saying, "Prabhupada, I feel so bad. I'm supposed to do all these things for you, and I can't do it." And he says, "That's okay. We can manage. You just get your health back." So his compassion was there at every step, too. At the end of one Rath Yatra festival, I remember Prabhupada was getting back in his car. And he was putting his feet in the car, so the door was open, and I knelt down, and I held my hands like that to Srila Prabhupada. I said, "Prabhupada, is everything all right?" And Prabhupada took his arm, and he put his arm around my head like that, and put his head right on my lap, and held my head with his hand like that, and he says, "Everything was first class." And that was probably the most affectionate embrace I've received in my life.
Your head was in his lap?
On his lap. He was sitting in the car like that, and I was kneeling beside the car with the door open, and I had my hands like this. And I said, "Prabhupada, is everything all right? Was everything good?" And he took my head, and he put his arm around my back like that, and put my head right on his lap like that, held his arm on top of my head. like that and said everything was first class. This social worker came to see Srila Prabhupada. And he was an old gentleman, but very, very meticulous. He had a very, well-tailored suit on, starched shirt, nice silk tie, spotlessly shined shoes, starched, cuff-linked shirt. Everything was just proper. Hair comb, glasses. He was an old gentleman. But Prabhupada started to talk about sex life. How if a person just wants sex life, then he's like a dog. And this gentleman was saying, well, I like sex life, And Prabhupada said, well, this is a doggish mentality, to just want sex life all the time. Does that mean that you're a dog? And he said, I guess so. That's what I like. So the conversation went on like that. So at the end, the gentleman was soundly defeated by Srila Prabhupada, but he didn't feel bad. So Prabhupada said to him, prasadam, bring prasadam. So the gentleman said, oh, no, I'm really not eating anything now. He said, no. He says, you must take prasadam. Because Prabhupada knew that this philosophy, although it was defeating him, it really didn't do too much. He did the prasadam, he had to take the prasadam. This was the thing that was really going to be able to make this man have a little spiritual advancement in life, because as far as accepting the philosophy, he had just willfully accepted the fact that he was a dog because he liked sex life. So to philosophically accept this teaching was not going to happen. So Prabhupada was insistent that he take the prasadam. So the devotee brings in a gulab. Now a gulab, as we know, is a big, juicy sweet full of sweet ball juice. So the man says, the devotee plopped the gulab in his hand. So it's, if these gulabs were particularly big. They were very big gulabs, and they were soaking in this sugar water for a long time. So the gulab was sitting in his hand, and it was like a sponge. It was like a big sponge. So the gulab, he was talking to Prabhupada, making the final, I'm teaching here, and how long are you going to be here, and maybe we can see each other again. And he had kind of developed a nice, friendly relationship with Prabhupada. They were having their closing remarks, but at the same time, he's kind of trying to balance this gulab in his hand so it doesn't drip on him. So the gulab starts to, the juice from the gulab starts to run down between his fingers. So he's trying to tilt his hand up while talking to Prabhupada at the same time, so the gulab juice doesn't run down his fingers. But now it starts to run down his wrist, and over his starched shirt sleeve, kind of dripping from the cuff link. So he's kind of holding it like this, doing this balancing act. He doesn't know what to do with this gulab, and Prabhupada says to him, "Eat it." now he's got this gulab, and Prabhupada's saying to eat it, and he's, well, no, I don't want to eat it. I can take it with me. No. Prabhupada said, no. You must eat it now. So the man, he doesn't quite know what to do. So he thinks, well, I'll just take a little bite of this gulab, and it'll be all right. It'll satisfy Prabhupada. So he takes a little bite of this gulab, so it ruptures the gulab, and now all the deluge of sweet ball juice is running out of the gulab. It's running down it's on his tie, and now it's dripping on his shoes, his patent leather shoes, and he's now it's all over the place. So Prabhupada said, no, eat it all. So by this time he doesn't care. He's just totally covered with gulab. So he throws it in his mouth. Now he's got this big gulab in his mouth. And the sweet ball juice starts to run down his face. So his hand is full of gulab juice, sugar juice, his cuff links, his tie, his pants, is dripped on his shoes, and it's coming down his face. But he finishes the gulab, and he smiles. He said, "That's very good." And Prabhupada said, "Yes." And he said, "I'd like to have another one of those." And Prabhupada said, "Oh, very well." And he says, I think it will go good in my rum. Prabhupada said, wait a second. This is not to put in your rum. This is to eat. This is prasadam. This is food offered to the Lord. He says, no, it tastes sweet. It would go good in my rum. I drink rum every night. I'll just put this gulab in my rum. So Prabhupada calls for another gulab and he gives it to the gentleman, and the gentleman gets up and he says, thank you very much, Prabhupada, and it was nice meeting you and everything like that. So he's walking out the door and Prabhupada said, now don't put that in your rum. And the gentleman said, all right, I'll just eat it. He went out smiling, but all this gulab juice dripped all over him. So it was actually a very hilarious, because I was there and people who were there couldn't believe what was going on. We were once at Srila Prabhupada's room, and I walked into the room and I looked over in the corner and I saw Prabhupada in a white sari. It was Prabhupada's sister. It looked like Prabhupada, so much like Prabhupada, I had to do a double take, and then Prabhupada walked into the room. There was Prabhupada, and there was Prabhupada's sister, all sitting there in the room together. So they were talking back and forth in Bengali together, and it came time for Prabhupada to take his rest. And his sister is sitting on the floor. She kind of rolls over, and she starts taking her rest in the room. And I said, Prabhupada, is that all right? And she said, yeah, she won't go away. She's staying here. So she just kind of moved in, and then she started cooking for Prabhupada. So Chitananda was doing the cooking for Prabhupada, but Prabhupada wanted her to cook these kachoris, because Prabhupada liked kachoris, and she could cook them just the way he liked them. But we weren't used to eating these, kachoris. So the next day at Mangalarti, nobody showed up. We were just staying in a small rented house. It was a donated house. But we were having our morning program down below, and Prabhupada would come down. And the next morning, after his sister had cooked, nobody showed up for Mangalarti. So Prabhupada called us in afterwards and says, what's the matter? How come no one's here for Mangalarti? And we said, well, your sister cooked these kachoris for us yesterday, and we all ate so many that we couldn't get up in the morning. So then he called his sister in, and he started arguing with his sister in Bengali, back and forth. I couldn't understand. And she was talking, and he was yelling at her, and she was answering back. And then he said to Achyutananda, I says, I'm going to drive this woman out of this house. She's killing all my brahmacharis with those kachoris. So Srila Prabhupada and his sister had, a relationship which was far above, our understanding. But that was just a humorous incident of her being there. Another incident that comes to mind was in 1969. We had this temple in La Cienega Boulevard in Los Angeles. And actually, it might have been 1968. Anyway, it was 68 or 69. And it was very well attended. The temple was very well attended. The devotees would go to Griffith Park in Los Angeles and have chanting and prasadam distribution. Vishnu John had little puppets who have puppet shows there, and who would bring back people from Griffith Park. And also we would go down to Laguna Beach, all the way from Los Angeles to Laguna Beach. There was a store down there, the Mystic Arts bookstore. And they had a meditation room in the back, and they would let us go and have kirtan. So we'd bring, van loads of people from Laguna Beach up to Los Angeles for the feast. So the feasts were very well attended. So on this particular day, there was a fire jagga. People were getting initiated, and Srila Prabhupada was there. He was presiding over the jagga himself, as he did in those days. And the temple was very full with people, and there was an Italian filmmaking crew at the temple at that time. They were filming the whole thing. And if somebody could get hold of that film, it would be a historical piece of footage. But Srila Prabhupada was there, and this one lady came, a Hindu lady, came into the temple. And she was a guru to these Hindus. Her name was Shama Devi. And she ended up having a ashram right next to the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. But anyways, she came into the temple and she was sitting in the back of the temple, and they rolled out her carpet and she sat down on the carpet, and her disciples were older Hindu ladies and gentlemen. They sat around her, and Srila Prabhupada was performing the Jagga. So Srila Prabhupada, after he finished the Jagga, he went up and got on the stage. And in those days we had Prabhupada's Vyasasan sitting right on the stage at the same level as the altar. Srila Prabhupada was having a kirtan, and he was playing his kartals, and he was leading the kirtan, and then he told someone else to lead. Maybe it was Vishnu Jana or something like that. So in those days, the kirtans were ecstatic, but they weren't uproarious because of the dance step we used to do. We used to do the Swami step, and the Swami step was a choreographed step that everybody would very in coordination with one another dance, put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. The arms would be upraised like that, and we'd all be chanting and dancing like that. A long aisle of devotees on either side, facing one another, and be dancing back and forth, having kirtan. So Srila Prabhupada, during the course of this kirtan, he got up from his Vyasasan, he was doing the Swami step with us, like that. We were all doing the Swami step. And then Srila Prabhupada did something that he had never done before. Nobody had ever experienced this before. Srila Prabhupada stopped doing the Swami step, and he started jumping up and down. Jumping up and down. We had never done this jumping up and down. No one ever knew about jumping up and down. We just knew the Swami step, and we were all happy doing the Swami step. But now, Srila Prabhupada was jumping up and down. And it was the most amazing thing, because it seemed like the whole universe was rocking. But Srila Prabhupada started to jump up and down. So we looked at each other and we said, wow, Prabhupada's jumping up and down. I guess we can jump up and down too. So it's never been the same since then. Kirtan has never been the same. The Swami step is still there, but it's only done by very conservative devotees. Everybody likes to jump up and down and really get into the uproarious kirtan. So Srila Prabhupada was jumping up and down. The devotees were jumping up and down, bouncing off the walls. It was fantastic. So meanwhile, this lady, Shama Devi, she was there, and she was having kirtan. And one of her disciples opens a bag and gives her a little madanga. So, whoa. In those days, usually there was one madanga per temple. One madanga, and only certain devotees could play that madanga. Those were devotees who were good madanga players and who wouldn't drop it or put their hand through the end of it. You know, they had to be good madanga players, and they also had to be very concerned that the madanga didn't get damaged, because in those days we didn't have our, American-made plastic madangas. So if a madanga got broken, you'd have to send off to India for it. It took a long time to get it, and we didn't have the import-export thing happening so proficiently in those days. So, but they pulled out a madanga, a little small clay madanga, cool, and they gave it to her. And she started playing the madanga. So we kind of stepped aside, and she kind of moved her way up to the front. And Srila Prabhupada, he's jumping up and down, dancing. And all the devotees are dancing, and she's playing this madanga. And she starts to dance. And she starts to float around like a butterfly, taking these little small steps. And she's an elderly lady. She's about 50 or 60. She's elderly, but very, very conservative. And she's dancing around like a little butterfly, with her sari over her head, and she's playing the madanga like a gopi. So all the female devotees now, all right, here was a Vaishnava. She could play the madanga. She was dancing, and Prabhupada was obviously approving it, because he was up there on the stage, jumping up and down. So then Prabhupada jumps off the stage, and he's in with the devotees, amongst the devotees, jumping up and down, chanting Hare Krishna, and this lady, Shama Devi, she's playing the mridanga and she's dancing. And then the kirtan ends, and then Srila Prabhupada says, now you lead. So she starts to lead the kirtan. Now, the women are really ecstatic. Now, there's another precedent. We can lead kirtans too. We can jump, we can dance, we can play the mridanga, and now we can also lead kirtans, because here, this old lady is doing it, Prabhupada's approving it, he's doing it, he's allowing her to do it. So everybody was in total, euphoria there. And she led the most melodious kirtan. It went on and on. Srila Prabhupada was dancing, and she was dancing, and it built up. And it was the most fantastic experience that all the devotees could have had. So, before the dust even settles from the kirtan, the devotee is on the phone to New York. Prabhupada's jumping! Prabhupada's jumping! What do you mean he's jumping? He said, you don't have to do the Swami step anymore. Prabhupada's jumping up and down. The kirtan was going on. Prabhupada was jumping, running up, back and forth, jumping up and down. And Brahmananda was saying, well, how do you do it? How do you jump? He said, you don't have to do it. You just jump up and down. Just be ecstatic. Put your hands up in the air and just jump as high as you can do. So Brahmananda called Boston. Boston called Montreal. And within a matter of hours, the whole country was jumping. And like I said, kirtan has never been the same since that time. We celebrated Janmashtami in Tokyo, Japan. And that was a very intimate Janmashtami celebration. Srila Prabhupada started the tradition of reading the Krishna book on Janmashtami, as much as you could. He said, read the whole Krishna book if you can, but read it constantly throughout the day. So Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to cook a feast. Now, Dinapan was the printer that was printing our books in those days, so they were courting Prabhupada. So they put him up in a nice house, and they had a chauffeur-driven car and everything come to him. And the temple was in another building. So we all went to Srila Prabhupada's house on Janmashtami Day, because he wanted us to cook a big feast for midnight and read the Krishna book during the day. So we sat around and we started reading the Krishna book, and Hare took a turn, and Tamal Krishna took a turn, and Kirtananda took a turn. So then Srila Prabhupada said, now it's my turn. So he took the Krishna book and he started reading it. And I could see in Srila Prabhupada's eyes, you can see when a person reads something, how if they're really fascinated with something, that you can tell by the manner and the exclamations they make and the feeling that they put into the reading. And Srila Prabhupada was reading very feelingly. And later on, I had talked to Prabhupada, and I said, Prabhupada, you were reading that Krishna book so feelingly. And Prabhupada said, yes. He said, I like to read my Krishna book. It's very entertaining. It's not that just because I wrote it, I don't care about reading it anymore. He said, these are Krishna's pastimes. And it's very ecstatic to read the pastimes of Krishna. So like that, we went on and on, all day long, reading the Krishna book until midnight. And we didn't finish the whole Krishna book, but we took a pretty good piece out of it. And then the next day was Vyasa Puja. So Kirtananda was a senior disciple. I mean, senior means you were devotee for 2 or 3 years in those days, so it wasn't that we were all so well seasoned, but we should have known how to celebrate Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja. So Srila Prabhupada arrived at the temple about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and no, it wasn't 11 o'clock, it was 11:30, like that. And he came and he sat on the Vyasasana, and he said, where's the Pushpa? Now we were thinking, Pushpa, what is Pushpa? And Sudama was thinking, oh, he wants Pushpa, Pushpa rice, a fancy kind of rice called, what do they call it? Pushpa. There's some kind of rice called Pushpa with all these nuts and curd balls and everything like that in it. So he immediately starts making this rice, which delays the process even further. And he said, well, where's the feast? By this time, the feast is late. So where's the garlands? We didn't have any garlands. And there was no flowers to do the Pushpanjali. So Srila Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasana with a whole temple room full of people. And he said, no Pushpanjali. The feast is not ready. You're not saying the right prayers. There's no garlands for the deities. He said, how is this a Vyasa Puja? This is not the Vyasa Puja. He said, this is a disgrace. And he got up and he walked out the door. And we were all devastated. What has to be done? Kirtananda started to cry. Because Prabhupada called him personally. He says, Kirtananda, you are a senior disciple. I mean, you don't know how to celebrate the spiritual master's appearance day? You don't have any understanding? He said, this is a disgrace. He said, tomorrow we will celebrate it properly. He walked out the door. The whole temple was full of guests. Everybody was like a cold ice pick had stabbed into their heart. So we were all devastated, and he called us over to his house that same day. He said, now I will tell you, and you must never forget for the rest of your life, this is the way you must celebrate, this Vyasa Puja. And he told us, say these prayers. You have the offering ready. The offering has to go on 1 minute before 12. It has to be on the altar at 12. The flowers have to be there for the Pushpanjali. You must stand, offer the spiritual master 3 times, bow down 3 times, say the Mangalacharanam prayers, say the prayers to the spiritual master. Have homage. We didn't have any homages written either. You must have the homages written. Everything must be there. This is the way you must celebrate the appearance of the spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada was very, very strict with his disciples, but at the same time he was very kind. But once you became his disciple, it wasn't that he wasn't kind to you anymore, but he wanted to, he wanted you to be trained up in Krishna consciousness. He wanted, for your own benefit, for your own spiritual benefit, that you would know these right things to do and not be offensive by your ignorance. So the next day, Prabhupada came back to the temple again. We celebrated exactly the way he wanted us to do it. He was pleased. He was pleased. They were doing a fire jagga in, I think it was Vrindavan temple or something, some temple, Srila Prabhupada. The temple had already been established, but they were doing a fire jagga. And one of these, I think it was one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, it was in the middle of the fire jagga, and he leaned over to Prabhupada and he said, Srila Prabhupada, they're doing it all wrong, they're doing it all wrong. And Prabhupada leaned back and he looked at him very calmly and he said, that's all right, they're just practicing. And one time there was a little boy who came up to Srila Prabhupada to get a flower. And there's a famous picture, and the little boy is standing there, and he's a little boy, he's about 5 or maybe younger, and he had a little shaved head with a seeker and everything. His name was Janaka. It was in Australia. And Prabhupada wouldn't let the flower go. He had the flower there in his hand, and the boy came to get the flower, and Prabhupada wouldn't let the flower go. And the boy had the flower, and Prabhupada had the flower, and the boy realized that everybody was looking at him, and he didn't know what to do. Should he just release his grip and go? He wanted the flower, but he didn't know if he should grab it. And Prabhupada knew that, and he was holding it, and he was watching that boy, and this very playful grin on his face. And so he eventually gave the boy the flower, but it was just a playful little incident. This quality of compassion is the thing that distinguished Srila Prabhupada from everyone else. He was totally compassionate. I think the quote is Paraduka Duki, the person who is so compassionate. That's the quality of the greatest devotee. No one is insignificant, and no one was insignificant to Srila Prabhupada. One devotee once said about his father, he said, oh, his is my father, and he said, but he's not a devotee, but he's all right. And Prabhupada said, no, a good fruit doesn't come from a bad seed. So in this way, the man felt so good about his son being a disciple of Srila Prabhupada because he was complimenting him in such a nice way. He didn't think anybody was insignificant. In that temple that we had in La Cienega Boulevard, some of these old ladies would come from the neighborhood, and they would come And they were so old, they would have those old lady kind of shoes, you know, that laced up. And Srila Prabhupada said, they don't have to take their shoes off. And then Prabhupada said, put some chairs up in the back of the temple. And he let them sit up in the back of the temple with these chairs. And they would listen to Srila Prabhupada speak, and the devotees would have kirtan. And Srila Prabhupada he started the practice of circumambulating the temple from the inside, a big long circle, of all devotees. So he would come back to the back of the temple, and he raised his hands up in front of those old ladies and said, Hare Krishna! And the old ladies jumped up out of their chairs with their canes, and their little old lady shoes and little spectacles, and they said, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna! And they would sit back down again. Prabhupada would go around and lift his hands up, Hare Krishna! And they would sit up again, perk up, and chant Hare Krishna. And he would make sure that they would get their prasadam and everything at that time. So Prabhupada's compassion was there for everybody. He was not saying anybody was insignificant. Everybody was a child of God in Prabhupada's eyes, and everybody had the right to go back to home, back to Godhead, no matter what situation they were in. And some people were closer to getting there, and some people were not so close. But comparatively speaking, we're all thousands and millions of miles away. Well, Srila Prabhupada was, to our apparent limited vision, his health was deteriorating, and he requested that I come to India, to Vrindavan, to see him. So I had just got married, and my wife was pregnant with my first son. So I couldn't leave, and we were living in a very remote part of Hawaii. So I couldn't leave at that particular moment. But I promised that as soon as my wife had her baby, then I would come. So time passed after my son arrived, and Shridikirti came over to Maui from Oahu, and we flew off to India together. So at that time I wasn't living at a temple, so I let my hair grow a little bit longer than I should have. And when we arrived in Delhi, I thought, well, I can't go to see Srila Prabhupada like that, so we shaved up. And I had this big long sika. And Srila Prabhupada, when I walked in the room, it was a very, sober mood, dark, and everything was, subdued, and people were kind of morose, not making too much sound and everything. So I walked into Srila Prabhupada's room, and they said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, Madhavisa has arrived. So Prabhupada sat up in his bed, and I paid my obeisances, and Prabhupada, first thing he said, whoa, look at Madhavisa. He is maintaining such a nice sika. And he chuckled like that, knowing that, I hadn't maintained such a nice sika. I just had shaved up in Delhi train station. And the second thing he said, where is your wife? See, I had left Srila Prabhupada, I was a sannyasi, and then I had left and got married and everything like that. So that's not particularly the way you should do it. But Srila Prabhupada, he just shrugged that off. It was like immaterial to him. He wanted to know where my wife was. Not that, why have you got married? Why have you done this? He wanted to know, where is she? And he was fully aware that I was married and I had a child and everything like that, and he wanted to see her. And I said, well, Srila Prabhupada, she just had her first baby and she really doesn't want to travel. And she said, that's right, she shouldn't travel. But she is feeling okay? And I said, yes, she's feeling good. And you had a son? And I said, yes, Prabhupada, I had a son. And I said, and I named him Abhay Charan. Is that all right? And he said, yes. spiritual master. And then he went on to explain the famous purport that's in the Srimad Bhagavatam about the elephant and the crocodile. That the elephant is very mighty and very strong, but when he enters into the water, he becomes victimized by the crocodile because he's not in his proper atmosphere. If he's on the dry land, he can annihilate, he can crush the crocodile. But because he's in the water, he's at the mercy of the crocodile. So he said, similarly, we may be situated in the wrong atmosphere for executing Krishna consciousness. We must put ourselves in the right atmosphere, and then we can execute our Krishna consciousness and with all strength and vigor. So he said, it doesn't make any difference. You are a sannyasi, now you're a householder. That doesn't make any difference. The proper thing is just to go on with your Krishna consciousness, execute it. If you can't execute it, if you're becoming weak by artificially embracing a sannyas order, and you must take another order to become strong again, that is all right. But the most important thing is don't leave the association of the devotees and continue on with your Krishna consciousness. And he made me feel so good, and it was very enlivening and personal to be with Srila Prabhupada in those last days.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. I hope that everyone enjoyed that little video that we shared today of His Grace Maladvisa Prabhu. Certainly a lot of points covered by him that were personal to him, and a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of us took away from. So we would love to hear what everyone, any points that anyone took from that video. I can start. I specifically enjoyed the part where Madhurya Prabhu and Srila Prabhupada were in the plane with the deities, and they had, and they basically played out a scenario of Srila Prabhupada being the Mayavadi, and then Madhurya Prabhu being the Vaishnava or the personalist, and then the roles were switched around. And then Srila Prabhupada said that in preaching, it's important to know your opposition's argument, even to the capacity that your argument can be defeated from it too. So that was very, very interesting, because I was thinking about it, that how it's actually quite hard to fathom that you can defeat your own philosophy with an opposition argument, because that level of understanding, and then still to then be able to defeat that philosophy with your philosophy, despite that, is quite hard to comprehend. But that is the level of understanding that Srila Prabhupada had, so that all these books that Srila Prabhupada wrote and translated, and all the lectures, and all the people that Srila Prabhupada convinced about Krishna consciousnness, can only be done if you have that much amount of understanding. So in terms of preaching, that was a very important point, that we shouldn't just be enclosed in our own bubble and just think that what we're being taught, we shouldn't be blindly following anything. We should also understand what are other religious or other people, or any other views that people have. It is important to know. You don't necessarily have to be engrossed in it, but to have an understanding of that, so that when people come to you and who follow that sort of thing, then you're ready for that. Because it's I've also realized that you're going to be, more often than not, you can be in an environment which is adverse, in which people challenge you about your whatever you're following or whatever you're believing, in Krishna consciousness. Although most people may not outwardly be challenging, but it can get to that stage where people challenge you and ask you tough questions. So you have to know about where they're coming from as well. And that comes with, understanding, proper understanding of our scriptures, and also relating that to, other people's beliefs as well, so that they can then understand. And I think doing it in that way, in which, Srila Prabhupada did with Mother Duisa Prabhu, in which playing out this scenario would have definitely helped him as well, and helped us too, in our minds to, not just take it for granted. Because I remember in another devotee's realization that they said that, they had this belief because, Srila Prabhupada said that Mayavadis don't know, they don't have full knowledge. And, personalists have, or we, have proper knowledge. Then people would just dismiss, Mayavadi philosophy as just bogus and, not, had no basis to it. And, basically just didn't, give it much importance. But then when they were faced with, some Mayavadi or impersonalist followers, they were actually defeated by them because, they took it for granted. So again, Srila Prabhupada was training not only Mother Duisa Prabhu, but all of us as well, that we shouldn't take what we are learning for granted, and we should also be very, we should have a good understanding of other beliefs and stuff as well, to help us in preaching and also to help us in our own understanding as well. Because it is also like everyone has doubts as well, when we're following. This also acts as a good way to dispel those doubts too. When we take that position and when we reference it back to Krishna consciousness and reference it back to our scriptures. So it's for me specifically, it's a good, it's a good aid to study the scriptures. So that's one point that I quite liked about the video and what Mother Duisa Prabhu said. And I'm excited to hear what everyone else has to say. So anyone can say anything, it's fine. We don't have to go in order or anything. So if anyone would like to say anything, go ahead. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, dear devotees, thank you, Krishna Samarpan Prabhu, for showing us a nice realization from Madhudisa Prabhu. And yes, I think there are so many points, and you already mentioned some. But like Srila Prabhupada always think about the devotees, and always like Srila Prabhupada has given an example about crocodile and elephant, and he explained that whatever situation you are, but you must be in Krishna consciousness and be association with the devotees. And also I realized that when Prabhuji said that he was reading his books, Krishna books, he has written. But I also heard from Amrish Prabhu before that because Srila Prabhu said, yes, though I written Krishna, I mean all the books, but that was dictated by Krishna. That's why I read it. And when I read it, I still get knowledge about the Krishna. So that is the real devotees, he always teaches one should always be in association and be there reading the books. Also, and he's always compassion for the devotees. Like when Madhudisa Prabhu was sick, so he was worried about him, and then he said, yeah, health is more important. And he always think about the devotees first. Even showing the how to do the Vyasa Puja. So that's what he always, he was upset on that particular day, but still next day he trained everyone. And I think since then everyone is following what Srila Prabhupada is giving us the methods and teaching, and we all are following it. So this is I found it very important points from this discussion. Hare Krishna. Thanks. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your nice presentation. Yeah, I also, I also agree with what you said. Actually, that point you said is also very important. That Srila Prabhupada also said that his books are not just written by him, but it's actually Krishna speaking through him. And we, I'm sure, as you also are thinking the same way, that we cannot actually comprehend that. It's hard for us to comprehend. But like you said, if we just continue with the process, then we'll start to relish those and get more realizations. So thank you, Mapuji. Thank you for your nice realization. And yeah, anyone else would like to say something? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Samarpan, Krishna Prabhu, and devotees. And thank you very much for sharing these wonderful realizations by Madhudis Prabhu. And it was very engaging, Prabhu, actually, when I was listening. Actually, it just grabs your attention, you are fully focused what he was saying, and the way he articulated, the way he told about the Swami steps and his Prabhupada jumping, and actually I felt it like I was there watching everything, what was happening. So it's very wonderfully actually presented. In particular, actually, the realization that really resonated with me is where Madhudis Prabhu shared his realization regarding he was a sannyasi and he later left and got married. And when he came back to Sri Srila Prabhupada after some time, so obviously, anybody in that situation might feel a bit awkward and bit nervous as well. But Srila Prabhupada was very compassionate, and he wasn't really, he didn't show any anger or anything, but he was very curious about, actually how he is, and he asked where is your wife and everything, and he inquired everything, in detail. So that was very nice. And then he actually shared that actually the Bhagavatam, actually the story regarding the Gajendra Moksha, he gave the example that how actually the elephant, when he's on the actually land, and he's the strongest, he can actually overcome or actually kill any enemy. But when he's in water with the crocodile, he's not in his proper atmosphere, it's not his natural territory. So become, actually at the mercy, at the crocodile. And means I heard this actually pastime from Amrish Prabhu, a couple of times, and it was one of the beautiful pastime I ever heard. But actually the realization Srila Prabhupada picked up, from that point, and how he presented to Madhudisa Prabhu that actually we should also, when we execute our devotional service, we should make sure we are in our proper atmosphere, that then we can be at our strongest, and we can be more focused how we actually render our devotional service. So I think that's something new that I learned, that actually we have to make sure that we are in our actually natural position when we actually, want to do a proper devotional service. And also he said that there is nothing wrong, actually in any order you are in, that grahastha or vanaprastha or sannyasi, if you are actually feeling strong, then actually you are in your proper position. If you are becoming weak in any order, then you can change order in order to become strong. The most important thing that actually you render a devotional service, very with the focus attention and with all the energy, so that realization was really good, that I actually it did make me think, that we should actually focus, and make sure that we are always in a proper atmosphere to actually, means we have to make the atmosphere proper for ourselves. It's not going to be there. So yes, Prabhuji. And also another one where Srila Prabhupada mentioned actually when devotee came to see him with his father, so, and he introduced Srila Prabhupada actually, and then but the devotee said that, oh, he's not a devotee, but he's all right. But Srila Prabhupada, the way he commented that, he said, good fruit doesn't come from a bad seed. And so that actually shows, how Srila Prabhupada actually see, actually he saw everything around him and all the living entities, and the way he complimented his father. So Madhudasa Prabhu also said nobody was insignificant for Srila Prabhupada. Everyone was equally important. So that actually proves that Srila Prabhupada, he's a pure devotee, and he has that actually the vision, the universal vision of the Paramahamsas. So yes, Prabhuji. So I think, there are many things to share, but I think I will leave that to the rest of the team. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhu. Thank you very much for your nice presentation. Yeah, you're right. It was very, very engaging all the way through. And he has a very distinct way of narrating. So it was nice. It was nice to hear him. I like the point you said, Prabhuji, about that, we should be in the right atmosphere, as Srila Prabhupada said. And I was just thinking, just on that point, like as you were mentioning that, to find the right atmosphere, it's we should also not be complacent, or we shouldn't also think that I'll just take the easy way out. Just because something may not be working out for us. So that's something that I've got to think about as well. That there can be a fine line. So yeah, it's actually quite a deep point that you mentioned, Srila Prabhupada mentioned as well, and how Srila Prabhupada related the Gajendra Moksha to this, was very interesting. Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, devotees. Thank you, Krishna Samarpan Krishna Prabhuji, for showing this beautiful video to us. And it was funny as well as very beautiful and inspiring for all of us. So first of all, when Prabhuji says that how he got his name Madhudvisha, and because that time when Srila Prabhupada was initiating everyone and then giving them spiritual names, because most of them were not Indian bodies, so it was very difficult for them to understand what the name means. So they were very eager to know that what does that name means. And then once he find out, he's in ecstasy. And then how he was treasurer, and then he was trying to, Srila Prabhupada said, what's going on? And then he said, sometimes I do this job, sometimes someone else does this job. And then Prabhupada said, oh, he's Madhudvisha. so he has to go to San Francisco now. So Srila Prabhupada was he was so amazing that he knew that which energy should be engaged where. And he has done this job so nicely that all those devotees have whatever qualities they had, it came very nicely. And also then there was this Rath Yatra where all the devotees from all over the world, they assembled. And then the thing which actually I liked the most was that they were trying to get the best things for Srila Prabhupada, because he is the spiritual master, and they were trying to get all buttons for his kurta, it shows that how much love one should have for his spiritual master. And as Srila Prabhupada said, that Guru is as good as God. So for us, because he is the medium to reach to Krishna, so we have to serve him with the best, whatever we have, whatever we can do. So that is very inspiring for me. And then there was a lot of things which Shrital Prabhu also said, the Gajendra Moksha Katha, which was Prabhupada very nicely related there in life of Madhudvisha Prabhu. So what I learned from this, that there should be always, we should follow ABC, Association of Devotees, reading of Srila Prabhupada's books, and chanting. And then that will save us from going haywire. That can save us from a lot of bad things. And that is the only way we can progress on our path, our devotional path. So that is very inspiring. The other thing also, like that, how these devotees were used to see Swami dance. They knew that hands up and then dance. That is the Swami dance. And then when they saw Prabhupada jumping up and down, and very new thing. So then other thing also, that Shyama Devidasi Mataji was playing mridangam, and then that was also very astonishing for them. And so every day Prabhupada was unfolding new things for these devotees, and they were learning and they were getting ecstatic. And just because of all these devotees' mercy, of course, Srila Prabhupada mercy, but whatever we are watching here today, we are hearing their realizations, learning, is just because they have done so much hard work recording that, keeping it safely, and then we are now enjoying it and we are learning it. So it's all their hard work, all their devotion towards Srila Prabhupada, that we are now getting their mercy. So that is my realization. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Saraswati Mataji, thank you very much for your very nice realizations. Really enjoyed to hear what you had to say, and you're absolutely right. You know, they've done so much hard work, and if it wasn't for them recording, you know, so many video footage of Srila Prabhupada and realizations, then we wouldn't be able to, you know, relish these realizations. And yeah, Mataji covered a lot of very nice points. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna dear devotees. Thank you, Krishna Marpan Krishna Prabhu, for sharing these very nice memories of Srila Prabhupada. They always, whenever I see those memories, they're always engaging, as Srila Prabhu said that, and very like a nectarian. So I really enjoy those. So yeah, it's a lot of points probably, and devotees already covered many points. One of the points when is Srila Prabhupada showed, you know, compassion. So Vaishnavas are para dukkha dukhi, you know. So when those old ladies came, you know, in the temple, and Srila Prabhupada was going around and and saying Hare Krishna to them, you know. So that's it's pure Vaishnavas, you know, pure devotees, so who shows mercies. And it's another instance also, like that gentleman that, you know, he came with a very nice suit and everything, and and getting the prasadam, because Srila Prabhupada always, although he defeated philosophically, but prasadam is is plays role, you know, and Srila Prabhupada knew that, and Srila Prabhupada always emphasized, you know, distributing prasadam. So and in the end, when Madhudvisha Prabhu came, you know, because to see Srila Prabhupada, and he changed his order, you know, he was sannyasi and grasta. But Srila Prabhupada, the one important thing I learned, that Srila Prabhupada said, never leave the association of devotees, you know. That brings us back. Like I can tell myself that we'll fall down every day, but when we are in association, we get really encouragement, you know, and a real push. So we get up and carry on again. So that's really a good point that I realized, probably. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
And thank you very much, Sanjay Prabhu, for your very nice realizations. Yeah, absolutely. Even for me, I mean, prasadam helped me as well. It continues to help me too. And yeah, like you said, we just have to continue with the process. Same as what Saraswati Mataji said as well, that the ABC of devotional service is important, and association is A. So yeah, thank you very much, Sanjay Prabhu. Hare Krishna. And also, if anyone else would like to say anything, it doesn't matter if the points have been said before. We'd just like to hear what you took out of it. So please feel free to say something, anything. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for showing us such a inspiring video. The 2 points I picked up, which I think realized by everybody, is that how important is that to be so strong in our philosophy to, beat the opposition party. And then for that, we definitely need to have the knowledge, the understanding. It can't just comes up like because a person, when we open our mouth, and I just get to know that how much we know about our scriptures. So it's not easy to like preach. We have to be always ready to answer the question, whatever comes up. And the other thing is like how Srila Prabhupada started dancing in the temple up and down, and the devotees then called it Swamiji's step. It's like, and we can see even now a lot of white devotees and a lot of devotees, they just go up and down with this, enthusiasm of showing love for Krishna. It's so great. Like it's all coming up from Srila Prabhupada. I was wondering, like today, it got it clear for me that dance is okay, but they do jump up and down. I used to think that, like, where did this come in? Now today I realized, okay, this is also came from Srila Prabhupada. So that's so good. It's like devotees are purely, following Srila Prabhupada's everything, whatever is given by Srila Prabhupada. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for showing this. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for your very nice realizations. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Actually, Prabhupada gave us what I've realized from what you were saying is that actually, like, Prabhupada's given all the devotees so much training and enough training for us to, carry forward in any time, place, and circumstance. So, like you said, even with the jumping and stuff, we didn't know how it came about, but from listening to their realizations, we know that it came from Prabhupada. And all the instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave them, and they're relating to us, we can take so much from them and apply it to our own lives, which is, I think, what everyone else was also saying. So yeah, thank you, Mataji, for your very nice realization. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for your wonderful realizations, as usual. And everyone has covered, all the points. All the points were just completely amazing. In a funny way, it also had the punch, of messages. So there's a lot of things. I think mostly everything, actually, I remember. That has inspired me a lot. The first thing I would say was about the preaching part that Srila Prabhupada was saying. And I was just thinking, just imagine that Madhudisa Prabhuji, he picked up the deities all the way to the plane, made the deities stand in front of the seat. And this was because the deities, the previous deities were broken. So they were trying to make sure that, these deities will be taken care of very nicely. So I was thinking, if I was in that position, I would be constantly thinking about it, that, okay, I have to position this correctly, and, constantly in the back of my mind, until I reach the point where the deities are safely transported. I could not think about anything else. But at that same point, Srila Prabhupada was making making this debate, having this debate, conversation, which is another taxing thing, you would say, because you have to think then, right? So how expert Srila Prabhupada was. Did Srila Prabhupada not have the concern? Of course, Srila Prabhupada had the concern, but how expert Srila Prabhupada was in conducting his Krishna conscious activities. There's so much to learn from that. So the point that Srila Prabhupada made there, as has been mentioned earlier also by devotees, was that, you should be so pakka in your knowledge that you should be able to defeat your own philosophy by the philosophy of your opponent. And also, this is mentioned that, by Srila Prabhupada, which wasn't mentioned here, but the faith and the conviction is the most important thing. Sometimes I see that, sometimes people don't believe in something, but they say it with so much conviction that the other person starts to believe it, and they themselves start to believe it. So that is in a negative way, but in a positive way, you may know all the philosophy and you may know everything, but the essence of that is to have that faith and conviction. Then it comes out correctly. Because when Srila Prabhupada used to argue or have a debate about, anything which was not Krishna conscious, and trying to prove Krishna consciousness, there was a firm conviction in what Srila Prabhupada was following. And we all, I feel personally that is what we need to have. It's very important to imbibe that in your own self, and then Krishna helps. So I think that that point is very important, because we all are in Hare Krishna WECAN, we all are trying to be preachers. So, always we will come across these situations. The second point was about prasadam. So there were two different points. The one point was where Srila Prabhupada's sister was there, and she was serving this nice sumptuous prasadam and kachoris, and then the next day nobody came for Mangalarti. So that was a lesson that how you should be conducting yourself, because I think that happens with most of us as well. If you have to regulate your activities. And on the other hand, when this person who was trying, who was not convinced or so much by philosophy, then prasadam is a secret weapon. That is what Srila Prabhupada always says. And Srila Prabhupada has used this in many places as well, where if the philosophy is not working, or anything else is not working, then prasadam definitely works. And I personally have experienced this as well, that prasadam absolutely works. It just works wonders. It's a secret, subtle weapon of Srila Prabhupada. And it has, for me, I'm there in this moment, so-called, from almost 23 years now. And there's no wonder that the beauty of prasadam and something that is not prasadam, you can clearly differentiate. It's a very, very privileged thing to be able to have Krishna's prasadam. So and we should be using that weapon also, I think, personally. Then the story about Gajendra and the crocodile, to how to put ourselves in a position which is conducive to our devotional service. And it is an amazing point what depth Srila Prabhupada has. We have heard the story of Gajendra so many times, and this one point is completely like, when I heard it, it just blew my mind. I thought, wow, how beautifully how the personality, like Srila Prabhupada, can think. Everything that you're thinking is about Krishna, and then everything you're also thinking is about how I can serve Krishna better. You know, that point really, I thought that was just completely amazing to take. And this is why it's very important that the devotees have recorded these conversations, because we are able to receive this nectar and experience this nectar. And experience what a great personality Srila Prabhupada was and is. So that was the third point. And also the point of Ratha Yatra, and how everything was, how the devotees were trying to do everything perfect. And that is how we should do. I think Srila Gurudev, His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj, always stress this point that, you know, you do your devotional service impeccably. Like you do it in such a manner that everything is dependent on you. And then after you do it, then you think everything is dependent on Krishna. So that is how you do your devotional service. Everything has to be perfect. Nothing can be, compromised. And on the same note, there was the other realization where Srila Prabhupada arrived one day early. And so the day before Srila Prabhupada arrives, and the day of Srila Prabhupada's arrival, so this is for any festival, because arrival of Srila Prabhupada is like a festival. And for us also, I can so relate to this. Like there is a day before the festival, the chaos and the confusion, and then there's so many things to do, and then the day of the festival, and then the day after the festival also. So there is also a quote by Srila Gurudev, His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj on this, that Janmashtami, you have Janmashtami, so you do everything. You may do your you may get up early in the morning, and you may do your Mangalarati, and you do your chanting, and everything is perfect. You do your reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, and you're fasting and doing all the devotional service. That is very good, but it should be every day. Janmashtami should be every day. What actually you're doing the day after the festival is more important. It's not like, okay, the festival is now over, now I can do whatever I want to do. So that is the learning, I think, also that comes from that realization, that it can happen that Srila Prabhupada can arrive one day early. It can happen that anything can be possible, and we should be ready. So yeah, and I would just like to just end with this note, that when the devotees were they finished the Rath Yatra, and Srila Prabhupada was very, very pleased, with Madhudvisa Prabhu. I think that's your ultimate goal of your devotional service, to please your spiritual master. Because if you please your spiritual master, then you can please Krishna, and that's the key to pleasing Krishna. So I think it was given in a very subtle way, but if you aim to please your spiritual master, then Krishna will be satisfied, and then your devotional service will be successful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very, very much for very nice realizations. Yeah, a lot to take from. A lot to take from what you said, and a lot to take from what Madhudvisa Prabhu said as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone from the intermediate or beginner class as well, please feel free. We'd love to hear what you thought or what you took from the video. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, the
first thing I took about is how strict or how disciplined Prabhupada was about things, that the festival day when prasadam was not made, the garlands were not ready, and uh, he then also he told devotees that he was so on point. He never sugarcoated things, and he said the things are not good, and yet so merciful that he asked them and showed them how things are done. So that's what I took, that we should always do our devotional practice and things in a discipline, in a systematic way. And the other thing was the Rath Yatra and the bhava of what pure devotees, when he started jumping uh, in a way that, yeah, it was very it gave me kind of a goosebumps, because that videos are surfaced, and when you see it, you can feel through, even that happened quite a years ago, you can still feel that aura, that bhava of a pure devotee, which we need to build. Uh, Surely we will, with all the discipline and carefulness in our practice. So yeah, these were 2 points I thought made me realize. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, you're very right. So it was super inspiring for me, and even I got goosebumps too. And yeah, like you said, you know, Srila Prabhupada was very meticulous, and that's also from what I understood from these realizations, is that Srila Prabhupada was not only talking to them, but he was talking to everyone, that all the next generations, and well into the future as well. Because as we know, this is the golden age of Harinam Sankirtan, and the next 10,000 years are the golden age for devotional service for us in Kali Yuga. And all the teachings, all the little things or the big things, or all the instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave to the disciples, can very much be applied to all of us and everyone after us and into the future as well. And which is why listening to these realizations is so important for us. And yeah, as you know, as I as what you said, that that you are inspired by these things, that basically proves that whatever Srila Prabhupada was saying to Mother Dvisa Prabhu or to anyone else, he was also saying to us, and that's why we share these videos, so that we get something out of them. So yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, for sharing those. Very nice. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing the video, Prabhu. Apart from what Om Prabhu just said, that Prabhupada used to keep so much discipline, what I realized is that how he made us realize that path of devotion can be such interesting thing. And like, he was also dancing with devotees, right? We listened to the video that he used to dance up and down with devotees. So what I realized is how he made it so easy and interesting for us to go into the devotional path. Like before, when I did not have much knowledge, I used to think that devotional service is just meditating and doing artis and puja. But I didn't realize how this could be. So thank you, Prabhuji, for sharing. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Brother Prabhu, for sharing your nice realization. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Same for me as well. Even when I was getting when I was in the beginner stage as well. I mean, I still am, but those sort of doubts or things quickly became dispelled when you hear and when you listen to devotees like Prabhupada's disciples, and when you're in association of other devotees as well, these questions that you have get answered, and also in such an encouraging way too, because we know that even they, when they were starting, they also had these doubts too. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Prabhuji. That was very insightful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you, Krishna Samarpan Prabhu, for showing us nice video today. It's always a joy to watching the devotees' realizations, how they share their memories with Srila Prabhupada and all, and it's really instructive for us every time. I just want to share a few things. About the prasadam, the funny moment when Srila Prabhupada asked devotee to eat the gulab jamun, all the as sugar syrup was running down and all, and I was imagining that moment, how funny it looks. But apart from that, like Srila Prabhupada is always insists to devotees to have a prasadam, and it's really works good, as Purna Pragya Mataji also mentioned that one before. I remember that we used to go to the temple, plus also Amrish Prabhu's house for the Namahata. And then I always like found about the prasadam. All the Matajis used to cook so nicely, and even the temple, we started because of the prasadam only. So Srila Prabhupada is really like up to point, how he knows how to attract the devotees as well, and how the prasadam works. The other point was the dance when Srila Prabhupada started to jump up and down, and every devotee was like surprised that how it's a different style of dancing now. It's not a Swami dance. Srila Prabhupada is jumping, and they're telling everybody, Srila Prabhupada just is dancing up and down, and it's not a Swami dance, and it's different. And he was so enthusiastic, and I was like remembering when we were at the beginning in the Krishna consciousness, when we used to go temple or in our Namata center, sometimes when we do the kirtan, everybody used to dance, and I was too shy, like how they dance in the temple with in front of everybody, like. And then one of the Namata lecture in our Newlin Center, Srila Prabhupada, Amrish Prabhu was explaining, like, when we are so excited, we dance. And then when we are so happy, we dance. And that's how, if we are so happy in our Krishna service, we should dance when we are glorifying Krishna and all. And then I realized like how devotees are so much in the love with Krishna, and then how they start to dance. And then slowly, as I realizing, then I start to dance in the temple, and then I was like, not shying to dance, and it was so nice. And I was remembering all this when I was listening to Prabhuji. So yeah, it's nice things. Apart from that, most of the points are covered by all the devotees, but these 2 points is like related to me as well. I wanted to share. So thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for your very nice realizations. Yeah, prasadam is magic, and yeah, like you said, it's in devotional service. There's something for anyone. If people are inclined to cook prasadam, or inclined to read scriptures, or inclined for deity worship or chanting, anyone and everyone has the ability to progress in devotional service. So yeah, thank you, Mataji, for a very nice realization. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Krishna Prabhu, for taking the lead. We are definitely missing out Amrish Prabhu, but you are so nicely playing that role. Very nice to see, and a very heartfelt feelings. And thank you, Purnipanga Devidasi Mataji, for supporting Krishna Prabhu. I know you are supporting. And thank you, dear devotees, for covering so many, almost all the points. Nothing to share, nothing new. So my take from this program is, I think we have seen this before also, is that is very repressing. And Prabhupada were a walking Bhagavatam. Whatever he did was scripture. Whatever he did was perfection. And obviously he was teaching to the next generation that how we should do things, whether it was a book reading or book distribution, whether it is about the prasadam, whether about the DT, whether about the Guru Puja, where about how we interact with devotees, how we talk to the new devotees. And he was basically, it was a pastime, and he was walking Bhagavatam. I heard from Maharaj also that we need to read only Prabhupada books, and Gita and Bhagavatam are just more than enough for this lifetime. And then we see these realizations from these devotees who are actually describing Prabhupada's style of preaching or doing things with other devotees, how he dealt with it. To that, it is very joyful. Now, we also somehow, whatever small, big, whatever way, we also try to learn from Prabhupada, and we also try to preach Prabhupada's message. It is not our message. We always glorify Prabhupada's message. And how nicely, as Mataji said, Puna Mataji said, that it is not knowledge, it is the conviction that people, the confidence with which you speak, that people actually, the feelings, that feeling people take from you, and that feeling which is so important. Everybody feels it. So, so how nicely we can do that, how nicely we can represent Prabhupada in whatever way, but the purity should be as much as possible. Of course, I'm impure, and we are not able to do it the way it should be done. But that is the responsibility on us to pass on this message to the next generation, so that they understand the Prabhupada as he was, not as we understand, as we try to justify things, as we try to adjust things, and we try to. That's another big challenge happening. The time, place, and circumstances in which Prabhupada preached, and in which Maharaj Vishnu Goswami preached, and which now we are encountering that situation is altogether different. And but that purity, that the knowledge, that the pastimes, they are so pure that they can be actually based on time, place, and circumstance. That is specifically of Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj, that how nicely those things can be conveyed, how nicely the things can be explained. And Prabhupada also taught us how to actually explain, how to practice those things. So this is very refreshing. Thank you very much again, Krishna Prabhu. You are awesome. Keep doing it. You are the hope for us. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Avinash Prabhuji. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for your very nice realization. And you raised a very important point that I was thinking about as well, actually. Where you said that, you know, passing this on to the next generation and the generation after that is so important, you know, because things can get diluted with time. You know, and like you said, Srila Gurudev, His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj, and his specialty was to practically apply everything to, you know, one's life, and that was the biggest teaching that Srila Gurudev gave. And again, in whatever time, whatever place, and whatever circumstance you're in, holding that fundamentally is what will, you know, keep us on the right path. And I think, you know, with all the devotees, you know, from this WECAN programs that are preaching now, they're also very much keeping that on the forefront of their minds when preaching, and as should everyone, really. You know, trying to practically apply the knowledge given by Srila Prabhupada, because the fundamental knowledge should not be diluted. And, you know, by hearing these devotees and by listening to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, Srila Prabhupada's books, it won't happen. So yeah, no, thank you, Prabhuji, for your very nice realization. And it's a point to ponder on, you know, for us. Thank you. Hare Krishna. We have about 5 more minutes. So if anyone else would like to share anything, we'd really like to hear what you have to say. Any maybe one or two other people. yeah, please come forward. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll give it about 10 more seconds. I think everyone that's present here has said something, most of them. So we'll give it 10 more seconds if anyone would like to say anything. And then after that, we can conclude the program. Okay, well, it looks like everyone has said their realizations. So once again, thank you very much for participating in this program and listening to His Grace Madhudusa Prabhu's realizations. Yeah, very, very insightful to hear everyone's realizations. So thank you very much. So obviously now that the program is finished, whose turn is it now to sing Maharaj Maharaj Pizarra? So I see that Subhadra and Madhav are absolutely ready to go ahead. So I think that question is answered. You guys can take it away. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Madhav. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Okay, let's go. Let's hear it.
Maharaj, Maharaj, please hear us. Maharaj, Maharaj, please hear us. We have learned some real good stuff. We have learned some real good stuff. Maharaj, we have learned one thing. Maharaj, we have learned one thing. And today for you we will sing. And today for you we will sing. If our room is clean, if our room is clean, then our mind is clean. Then our mind is clean. If our mind is clean, if our mind is clean, we can do anything. We can do anything. If our room is dirty, if our room is dirty, then so are we. Then so are we. And if we are dirty, and if we are dirty, we're not happy. We are not happy. Wasting time. Wasting time. It's the greatest crime. It's the greatest crime. Because wasted time. Because wasted time means a wasted mind. Means a wasted mind. So best is your time. So best use your time. When you're in your prime. When you're in your prime. And your whole life. And your whole life will be sublime. Will be sublime. If your wealth is gone. If your wealth is gone. Then there's nothing wrong. Then there is nothing wrong. If your health is gone. If your health is gone. That's a different song. That's a different song. If your character dies. If your character dies. Then the world will cry. Then the world will cry. Only saintly behavior. Only saintly behavior. That's humanity thrives. That's humanity thrives. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We We can always remember Krishna.
We must always remember Krishna
And never forget him too.
and never forget him too.
But how are we to practice if there's only things to do?
But how are we to practice this with so many things to do?
That is the greatest question.
That is the greatest question.
And here's the greatest clue.
And here is the greatest clue. You must
You
learn
must
to
learn
walk
to mercy that Krishna remembers you.
You must learn to work so nicely that Krishna remembers you.
So listen very closely.
So listen very closely
And make your thinking sharp.
and make your thinking sharp.
Let's learn how we can live and work so Krishna won't depart.
Let's learn how we can live and work so Krishna won't depart.
If something due tomorrow,
If something's due tomorrow,
finish it today.
finish it today.
Whatever's due today,
Whatever's due today,
do it now, don't delay.
do it now, don't
Your
delay.
friends might be lazy
Your friends might be lazy
or doing bad things,
or doing bad things.
but you think again,
But you think again,
don't follow them,
don't follow them,
and you'll win the end.
and you will win the end.
Whatever work we're given,
Whatever work we're given,
we do our very best.
we do our very best.
We only live with what we and give Krishna the rest.
We only live with what we need and give Krishna the rest.
So this is how to live, to work and to play. You learn to live, you'll see Krishna every day.
This is how to live, to work and to play. You learn to live this way, you will see Krishna every day.
And when the time is up, he takes us above. We'll sing it down to him with a heart full of love.
And when the time is up, he'll take us up above. We'll sing and dance with him with a heart full of love.
So chant Krishna's name, his glories and his fame. His only with his world, forever we can sing.
So chant Krishna's name, his glories and his fame. It's the only way in this world we can never become sane.
Now please ask this greatest question.
Now please ask this greatest question
And find this greatest clue.
and find this greatest clue.
You can only remember Krishna.
You can only remember Krishna
Krishna remembers you.
if Krishna remembers you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.
Ananta Gauri Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai.
Jai.
Tagore Premanandi Hari Hari Go.
Hare.
Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimati Mahavishnu Goswami Niti Namane. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prashanine Nivashishani Nadi Pasach Deshnarane. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for participating in this week's program. And we will see you, as my dad says, always next week, same place, same time. So chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Krishna. Thank you.